I think it's probably worthwhile talking a little bit about that acronym many people have become familiar with, ESG, for good or for ill, so environmental, social governance. And I suppose it came on the scene, it was seen as an unalloyed, do-gooding thing. And there's lots of talk about it providing win-win investments, which turned out not to be backed up by the evidence, judging by recent studies. But it does attract those who hope for business to be able to do good through their business activities. And it's since become supported by a vast array of international reporting frameworks to try and bring about any of the goals that have been set by the organizations that are supporting certain aspects of it. And these are typically thought up in cosmopolitan hubs by people like you and I, right? The professional managerial class. And we can have a tendency to, and I say that more in a figure of speech rather than actually you and I, but we have a tendency to think in solutions rather than trade-offs. And let's get into the trade-offs, because you've posted about something specifically to do with military spending and security recently, where you said there are unintended consequences of these technocratic programs like ESG. What were those examples about military spending and activity that have been impacted by ESG?
Yes, so under ESG rules, defense spending, or rather lending to defense companies became undesirable because defense companies were seen as doing ill rather than doing good. So that meant that first of all, lenders didn't want to lend the money, and every company needs additional financial infusions every now and then for all kinds of reasons. But it became much harder for defense companies to lend money or to get financing because they were seen as doing harm rather than good. And so their financing became more expensive. And you can say, well, defense companies, they make products that kill people. Of course, that is doing harm rather than doing good. But now, with the world shifting, we have realized that, we need defense companies and we need their products if we have to keep our countries safe. And yet we have this long legacy of ESG making it difficult for them to get financing. And as a result, difficult for them to expand, which is precisely what we need them to do now. Now, some of this, some ESG practitioners and companies that use ESG rules and guidelines are beginning to change their ways, but slowly. And we need this investment in defense manufacturing now. If we are to get the defense equipment we need to send to Ukraine and to have in our countries. So it definitely is a case of unintended consequences. But it was also, I think, the case that the people who thought up and executed ESG never really understood national security.
No, I dare say that what drives people who get involved in ESG thinking about military conflict is probably not in their top priorities. And I suppose that goes back to that tendency for optimism, which obscures a whole bunch of important things, actually, and leads you to commit a few planning fallacies where you just think things will turn out okay because you've got good intentions. And I'm simplifying things heavily here, but that is a great example of thinking you can manage things by metrics and targets, and hey, how could this possibly have some kind of a detrimental impact on our national security by us just trying to do good? And so it has. And I guess there's a theme arising from some of your other responses here, which is linked to what you're talking about with China's accession to the World Trade Organization and relations with it and Russia. And those of us who are from these liberal countries, which have come from a very specific constitution, but it's from a very long culture, first Christian before then becoming secular, but still bathed in it for a couple of thousand years, and thus a very different way of seeing the world and approaching one another than other nations and regions. And I think we can be quite prone to being unscrupulously optimistic and obscuring things from our view that doesn't quite fit the narrative.
Yes, and And that has led many Western leaders and analysts and others to think and say that, oh, Putin would never do this, Putin would never do that. Both because we tend, the tendency is to think, to see others, to judge to assess their thinking, as if they think like we do. Well, they may think in a completely different way. They may have completely different priorities. So you can't, so if you engage in mirror imaging and say, well, invading Ukraine would be such a terrible idea because it would cause ABC harm to Russia. Therefore, it's not going to happen. Well, Putin may not be interested in those reasons. He may, invading Ukraine may be his number one priority. And mirror imaging, I think, leads us down the wrong path.